Martha, I thought it was a great speech. I've been listening to these inaugural addresses since 1961. John F. Kennedy, Ask Not. I thought this was the best inaugural address I ever heard. Obviously, a lot of this event today, a lot of the president's speech was colored by the emotion of the fact that exactly 2 weeks ago, 14 days ago, there was a mob of thugs, of insurrectionists, of domestic terrorists on the inaugural stand. And Joe Biden was saying that democracy prevailed. We were able to get through that. And he was talking about how we need to get through that in the future if we are going to be a united country. He talked about white supremacy, domestic terrorism. He said we must confront it. We will defeat it. My whole soul is in this, uniting our people. You know, I think it was less an inaugural address and more part sermon, part pep talk, talking directly to the American people, saying, hear me out. We have a right to dissent peacefully, but our disagreement must not lead to disunion. It was a call to our better angels, a call saying, look, we've got tremendous challenges, COVID, the economy, racial injustice, climate change, but there's nothing we can't do if we come together. And there's one other thing he said that I think especially us in the media must know. He said that there is truth and there are lies, lies that are told for power and lies that are told for profit. And I think that it was a call to all of us, whether it's us on the air, on cable or broadcast, whether it's us on social media, on our Twitter accounts, understanding that we have to deal from facts, from the truth, to hear each other out, as he said, a right to disagree, but not a right to violence. This is the easy part, as has been suggested. Now he's got to turn words, rhetoric into reality and action, but I thought it was a great start. Point I want to make, because there's been a lot of discussion since the president's speech about unity. I don't think unity means that the new president has to be politically neuter. There was an election. 81 million people voted for Joe Biden. As Barack Obama said, elections have consequences, and the winner does get to pursue his policies. The question, I think, is how you do it, and can it be done in a civil fashion? Can it be done in a with normal disagreement but not disunion? That was the contrast that Joe Biden was drawing today, and I think that's the key. Is, we're going to have political differences on issues. That's part of the beauty of our democracy. The key is, can we disagree agreeably and constructively and all work together for the good of the country, even though there are going to be sharp differences in what the good of the country means.
And you say there's a lot of discussion about that, Chris. It's worth noting, however, a lot of that discussion was sparked by these 15 executive orders, 2 directives to agencies. His team is boasting that the number of executive actions that he's signing surpasses his 4 predecessors on their first days in office. So this is a president who says he wants to heal the divide. There's a bit from his inaugural address just a moment ago on the forces dividing us. Okay, so Chris, what he said earlier, I know forces that divide us are deep and real, but not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the ideal that we are all created equal. You got that sense, as you just mentioned, Chris, that he is setting out to try to heal the divide that we're seeing in this country. So talk about these executive actions. What message does this send?
Well, it sends that he won. It's as simple as that.
Just for Chris Wallace to claim that this was the best inaugural address he's ever heard is striking unto itself, but to have said it on Fox News is especially noteworthy, considering it's to an audience that's been fed a steady stream of disinformation regarding this very election for the past several months. And yet if they fell for those lies, they were in for a rude awakening today. And yet still, Chris Wallace does represent a massive faction of Americans who were especially disillusioned with Trump's decision to incite an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol by virtue of his repetition of the big lie, that the election was stolen. And so just like Trump's approval rating plummeted even within the Republican Party, Chris Wallace speaks for those very people in saying that the media has a responsibility to deal from facts and from truth. And the gravity of Chris Wallace saying this on Fox News isn't lost on anyone, considering it was that very network that was responsible for pushing this lie all along. And of course, if you try to hold Fox News accountable, all they'll say is that the people responsible for spreading disinformation are their opinion hosts, and that clearly their audience is able to distinguish between straight news and opinion, even though the opinion hosts are the ones who have primetime slots on a network that literally bills itself Fox News. And so while they hide behind this notion that everyone knows not to take literally what the Tucker Carlsons and Sean Hannitys and Judge Jeanines and Laura Ingrams have to say, still the network parades them around front and center and ensures that their audiences continue to grow. And they know exactly what they're doing because they're not stupid, but they're banking on the fact that their audience is. Chris Wallace makes another point that directly contradicts the desperate talking point coming from the right, and that is this idea that suddenly, if Biden wants unity, that means he has to capitulate to the right, and so there's to be no accountability for anyone involved in the Capitol insurrection because that would harm unity. No Democratic agenda items passed because, hey, you said you wanted unity. No nominees presented who are too progressive because that won't be a good thing for unity. As if unity means that Democrats have to roll over for Republicans. A party, mind you, that wouldn't even abide by their own precedents if it meant they could further entrench their own power, like refusing to consider Obama's Supreme Court nominee because it was an election year, and yet ramming through a Republican nominee with only weeks to go until the election. I don't remember any concerns about unity then. And by the way, this wasn't lost on Chris Wallace, even if it was lost on Martha MacCallum. MacCallum frames her question in such a way that makes it seem like Biden's a hypocrite for calling for unity and yet daring sign executive orders. But Wallace isn't biting, explaining that all this means is that he won the election. Joe Biden isn't going to not sign executive orders and enact his agenda because of Republicans' bad faith definition of unity. Just like Trump or McConnell or any Republican never curbed himself one single time in their desperation to enact their agenda. All this does is put on full display the double standard at play, only minutes into Biden's administration. In reality, when Biden talks about unity, despite Republicans' bad faith performative grandstanding, he's not talking about surrendering his mandate to the losing party. He's talking about, not inciting an insurrection at the US Capitol at a bare minimum. He's talking about not spewing lies so glaringly false that it brings the country to the brink of war. He's talking about not pitting Americans against each other because of their political party, or the color of their skin, or their place of birth, or their sexual orientation, or their gender identity. He's talking about not treating Americans differently based on whether their state is more likely to deliver enough electoral votes for him to win the next election. So I get that Republicans want to play coy and pretend that unity means deference to them, but it is that exact bad faith that pushed people away from the GOP in the first place. So in terms of dealing with the Martha MacCallums and the rest of the Fox News hosts out there, my advice is this: don't let them forget the last 4 years. If they're suddenly concerned with unity, ask where the outrage was when Trump sowed division on a daily basis with zero pushback from the right. When they inevitably start crowing about being pro-life, ask where the outrage was when 400,000 Americans were dying of a virus that the GOP allowed to explode throughout this country. When they pretend to care about spending, ask where the pushback was while Republicans oversaw $7.8 trillion added to the national debt. When they pretend to be pro-small government and states' rights, ask why they supported an attempt to toss out the election results in certain states because they were unhappy that their guy didn't win. And when they pretend to be pro-police, ask why their team incited an insurrection that left a police officer bludgeoned to death at the US Capitol. They showed their true colors over the last 4 years, and at a bare minimum, they should be reminded of that. While you're here, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I take a deep dive into the top stories of the week, and I also interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Pete Buttigieg, Katie Porter, Al Franken, Cory Booker, Jamie Harrison, Mary Trump, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.